The first thing we're going to do is to create a tint, T-I-N-T. I'm using purple. You're going to choose your color and then you're going to use your brush and get a big old dollop, maybe 2 or 3, of white paint. You'll want to make sure that your cup of color, like my cup of purple, is filled up almost all the way because you're going to need a lot of paint. You're going to need almost the whole container. After you add your few dollops of white paint, mix, mix, mix. Don't forget to mix the sides, scrub your brush at the bottom, and really get as much white as you can mixed in to make a beautiful color. Since this is now light purple instead of dark purple, it's called a tint. Then wipe your brush off on the sides and get ready to paint. When you're ready, we're using a paintbrush and we're holding it like a pencil grip, close to the silver part, not at the top of the handle. And you're going to just start painting your pumpkin. When we paint, we pretend that our brush is like a ballerina's tippy toes, and we don't want to mash our brush down or press it down hard because we want our brush bristles to stay pointed like a ballerina's tippy toes. Almost like you're sweeping the floor with a broom. You're just sweeping that pumpkin. I like to start from the bottom and go up, but I like to stop every few seconds and just check out what I'm painting. I don't want to paint the very bottom where it's going to sit on the table, but I don't want any white showing. So every now and then I'm going to bend over and take a look to see that none of the white is showing when someone is looking at my pumpkin when it's sitting on the counter. I'm going to paint and I'm going to move that paint around, spread it around because I want to use every single bit of paint without wasting it. So don't be afraid to kind of put a little dollop of paint on your pumpkin and then spread it very quickly before it dries. You want a thin coat of paint. You don't want those globs to stay there. You want to spread them out as much as you can. I'm going to keep on painting, and I'm painting my entire pumpkin with this tint or light color. I'm also going to show you another trick that allows you not to waste your paint. You're going to get your doggy dish filled with water, and when you're painting, I want you to add that dollop of paint, spread it a little bit, and then dip your brush in the water. Just a little bit, just the very tip of the bristles in the water. And when the water mixes with the paint, it thins it out so that the paint goes further. So you have to use less paint. If you use too much water, you will be able to see your plaster showing through on your pumpkin. So if that happens, just add more paint. So we're just taking turns dipping our paintbrush in the paint container, spreading it around, a little bit of water, spread it around, a little bit of paint, spread it around, a little bit of water, back and forth like that. You'll know you don't have enough paint if you can see your plaster or your white showing through. Every once in a while, I need to take my brush and kind of dot or dig my bristles into the lumps and bumps or cracks and crevices. So we're using it like a broom, like we're sweeping our pumpkin, but every now and then you might need to turn your brush sideways and kind of dig in those little crevices because this pumpkin has a lot of texture. It's lumpy and bumpy, and those plaster strips really left a lot of room for you to paint on top of. So make sure that you don't leave any huge white areas. You can turn your pumpkin sideways to paint. You can grab it by the stem. You can stand up, sit down, whatever helps you to paint your pumpkin. I like to work on one side at a time because when I'm rotating it, I know that wet paint is going to stick to the newspaper. But that's okay. If that happens, just go over it again with more paint. Now, final step is painting that stem. Don't forget to paint the stem. A little bit of paint, a little bit of water. We're still using that trick to thin out our paint. And finally, we are going to look for any little cracks or crevices that we left behind or any little white spots. So I'd like to take my brush on this final step and just dot, 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 pat, 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 and get in those extra crevices. Look around. Don't forget to look near the bottom because even though your pumpkin is going to be sitting on the counter, you don't want any of the bottom to be white where people can see it. We're not painting the very bottom, but we definitely want to paint what's showing because this is a form. People are going to look at your pumpkin from all the way around the top, the side, and close to the bottom. Since we're painting a form, we want to make sure that everything that someone sees is going to be covered with paint. The very last step is to put your pumpkin drying near your name tag so that I can tell that it's yours, because we're not putting our names on our pumpkins today. And when we add to it next time, I want to be able to return yours to you. All right, looking great. I can't wait to see what your pumpkin looks like when you add a color today. Before you paint today, you're going to write your name or initials on the bottom of your pumpkin. Find the circle, use a Sharpie, and write your initials. First name initial, if your name starts with an A, you're writing an A, dot, then your last name initial, whatever letter your last name starts with, write that letter, dot, and then write the initial of the name of your teacher. For example, S is for Miss Smith. To get started, you're going to have a color paint with a tiny dollop of black, and you need to mix, mix, mix. The color paint you're going to get matches your pumpkin, except it's darker because it's a pure color, not a tint. But when we add black, we make it even darker, and it's called a shade. A shade is a dark color. I like to mix, 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 and then I like to kind of wipe the extra paint off on my lid every once in a while. And when I do that, I see black streaks. So I need to keep mixing until all the black streaks are gone. Then we're going to use this shade, or this dark color, to paint over the indentions of our pumpkin. You need to find where there was a rubber band or a piece of tape where your pumpkin indents, and you're going to use that line to create a real painted line. I like to start at the top and then paint down the side until I get to the part where my pumpkin touches the table. And make sure that whenever you're looking at it from a distance, you are not going to see that part of the pumpkin where the line is missing. So make sure you go all the way to the bottom. I like to find it with my finger first, and then I like to paint over that line. Remember, we're still painting over this plaster texture, so you might have to dot, 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 or dig, dig, dig at first. And I like to paint one line, and then I like to go over it to make it nice and neat. When I go over it, I'm making it neater, and I'm defining that line to make it clearer to see. I'm not making that line bigger. I'm just creating another paint stroke on top so that it looks better. When you're doing this, it might be tough to find out where your divots are or where those rubber band lines are, so just do your best. Wherever there's a lump, that's probably where you need to paint your line. Most friends created an X with their rubber band and then a line through the X. So most people are going to have 6 lines to paint all the way around your pumpkin. This is creating value. Value is an element of art that means that objects can be light or dark, or that colors can be light or dark. We're creating value today because we're adding some dark spots on our pumpkin, like a shadow. If you were to look at a real pumpkin and rotate it around, you should see the light hitting the pumpkin, and then parts of the pumpkin where the light is maybe absent or it's hiding from the light, and that's where you might see shadows. So we're adding another element of art today to make our pumpkins look even more realistic. We're adding a shade. It matches the color of your pumpkin, but it's just darker. That's called value. I'm going to continue painting around my pumpkin. I like to find where I think a divot is or a lump, and that's where I need to add my line. I like to paint it once and then go over it to make it look nice and neat so that it reaches the bottom where people are going to see it when they're looking at my pumpkin on the table. I'm going to continue painting, and then I'm going to paint my stem too so that my stem can have a nice shadow. You need to paint your stem as well, because when all of your lines are kind of coming to the top of the pumpkin, they kind of look like they meet together. So if you paint your stem, it'll look complete and it'll look like it's part of those lines. Leaving your stem light might look a little funny, because when all those lines come together at the top, it makes it look so separate from the stem. So go ahead and paint your stem with your dark color today too, or your shade.